Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy chilly Wednesday. I don't know where everyone is coming from, but I am in sunny Florida and it is 25 degrees right now. Your girl is cold, hence the layers. You can see I've got an extra layer on. One thing I've never forgotten from my time living in Michigan is how important layers are to keeping you warm. In any case, if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend. I am a runner, a jazzerciser, follower of God, and I am studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, which is a challenge on any given day, but I'm working my way through it. I started Wellness Wednesday because I've been in a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression. And I have learned a lot. I've learned a lot on this journey about myself, about others, just a lot in general. And I have also learned in all of that sharing ideas and tips and tricks with others really makes a difference. Sometimes a little pure wisdom means that somebody else who's walked a similar journey, because there are no two exactly the same, might have something that worked for them that might work for you. Maybe not. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti noodles off the wall sometimes. But when we share with each other, we learn new ideas and new ways of thinking. And that's super important. And that's one of the reasons I started Wellness Wednesday. With that said, if you're new here, I encourage you to comment, ask questions, share your tips and tricks, of course, keeping it positive and politics free. As we have enough of that on social media, right? If you've been following me for a while, then you already know that history. And you know that last week I talked, in case you missed the video, last week I talked about over-explaining, which is something that a lot of us do at some point or another, pretty much perpetually. So something came to mind when I made a statement in that video last week that made me think about things that irritate us and how we react. And I wanted to touch on that this week. So, what I mentioned, and it took me a minute as I was preparing for this to remember exactly what point in the video, because I didn't review the video. It was that brought me to this verse, and it is a Bible verse. And if that's not for you, that's okay. Just stick with me. But if it is for you, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it's Matthew 7 verses 3-5. And I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting exactly because I'm just not that good. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your eye? And I talked about this. I'm trying to think because I remembered when I talked about this and I thought I had it in my notes and I don't. But when I talked about this, it was, I think when it came up last week is when it was related to over-explaining that we do it, but then we get annoyed when others do it. And that sometimes when we're in the process of over-explaining, we can read the body language and the facial expressions of the person in front of us and see that they're getting irritated with our over-explanation and they want us to get to the point. And I thought about it and I thought I often find myself criticizing. I thought about that particular statement and how I often find myself criticizing, not outwardly. I try not to criticize too much outwardly to anybody else, because I do think language and the things that we give life are important. But I often find myself criticizing mentally something somebody's doing on TV, something somebody's wearing. And then I realized that oftentimes when I'm criticizing, I'm guilty of something similar, or I'm guilty of, I wish I could do that. Okay. And that's kind of the point here. So we need to be really careful with this because, when we are trying to look at whether or not our criticism is a reflection of something we're feeling inside, we need to use it as self-monitoring and as awareness, but not as self-judgment or self-talk and that negative self-talk. And that's really important. And it can be a very slippery slope. And I even catch myself going, hey, you're guilty, dummy. And then that's where that negative starts to creep in. You know, I may be being funny and my brain may think I'm being funny, but if I'm not careful with verbiage like that, then I can quickly roll into beating myself up for thinking critically about somebody else when I'm guilty of something similar or something the same, or when the reason it really bothered me is because I'm feeling less than. So again, to be crystal clear, so it made me think about things that set me off or that I strongly react to, but to be crystal clear, again, this isn't about excusing someone else's bad behavior or blaming yourself for maltreatment in any way. I want to make that clear right out of the gate. It is about, and I know this is cliche, it is about focusing on what we can control, which is a thing. And I know everybody says it, but it is really a thing. We need to focus on what we can control, which is our responses and our reactions and being aware of the why behind them. So I forgot to mention, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments. So let's talk about, why does blank, whatever it is, fill in the blank, bother me so much? Well, let's define bother. In real life, bother is, it's not the definition, but it's displayed when, or it looks like, when we're overreacting or instant irritations, things that get under our skin for no apparent reason, things that result in defensiveness or knee-jerk judgment or knee-jerk reactions, and things that stick with us longer than they should. Those things that get under our skin and then we can't seem to let them go. So psychology calls this projection, most of the time. And what that means is that we unconsciously, subconsciously, which means most of the time we're not doing it intentionally. And I catch myself seeing somebody else that's in my online business that's posting about, how great they did in sales this month, and I'm not there, and I just kind of roll my eyes, and then I'm like, stop it. Because that's about me. That's not about them. And I'm happy for them. I really, truly am happy for them. But if they're at a level that I want to be and I'm not there yet, then I'm like, you know what I mean? I get that. So that's on me. And those are things that I can control, and that requires some reflection. So basically, we're unconsciously or subconsciously attributing our own acceptable thoughts, feelings, urges, or traits to or on someone else or something else. And where we most commonly see this on social media, in pop culture, whatever you want to call it. Where we most commonly see this is when we see people accusing others of something that they are doing wrong, or accusing others of something to deflect from their own feelings of inadequacy. And a lot of times where this comes up is jealousy. If there's infidelity in a relationship, sometimes the perpetrator is accusing the other person, or maybe somebody thinks there's something going on because they're feeling some type of way about themselves. And so they assume that it changes the lens that they're looking through, if that makes sense. So when it comes to me, I'm really good at this. Okay. I'm really good at this. And I've learned to stop and examine myself, and I'm getting a little better at that, but it's still a problem. Because what happens is when I slip into that negative thought pattern and I start questioning my ability and I start questioning my worth, then I start taking things that other people say as personal affronts, basically. So if I'm feeling less than, what that means is I perceive or accuse someone else of treating me like I am less than, and I get bristly. So what does that look like? Spoiler alert, this is often where we find ourselves over-explaining, and this is where the over-explaining starts. Being irritated by someone's confidence when we don't feel confident, or how someone behaves when we don't feel free to behave that way. So, in other words, feeling judged when no one actually is judging us because we're over here judging ourselves. Like if I'm having a conversation with you, I have a friend, and every time I have a conversation with them, their eyes are up and down, up and down, up and down. And on a good day, that doesn't bother me at all. Doesn't even faze me, because I know that's the way they are. On a bad day where I'm feeling some type of way about how my hair looks, or I'm feeling extra fluffy or anything like that, then when I see their eyes roving up and down, I assume they're judging me and the way I'm dressed and the way I look, and that they're seeing all these imperfections that are in the back of my mind. That's the best real life example I can come up with of what I'm talking about here. So how we're feeling about ourselves very, very often, or something that's going on in our lives. Have you ever like freaked out on somebody about something only to figure out that whatever you were freaking out about was really just a tiny little thing and it was something that was going on with you? I can remember years and years and years ago when I was married and my daughter was like, I don't know, 2. I was repressing some serious feelings with my husband at the time, and he left a wooden spoon, an old wooden spoon, floating in a sink full of water, and I lost my noodle on him about this wooden spoon, when it really had nothing to do with the wooden spoon and had everything to do. There was some kind of a link there, some kind of a trigger. I was repressing feelings about how I felt he was not respecting me, and this spoon became the object of disrespect, and it was absolutely insane because I really just lost my noodle. It had nothing to do with the spoon. So that's another great real life example of what I'm talking about here. So that's what happens is, we're irritated by someone else's confidence when we feel like we're not confident enough. And if somebody else is behaving in a way that we wouldn't normally behave, or maybe we were told was not okay to behave, then we have a tendency to judge them, or they get on our nerves, or maybe we attribute it to arrogance because they're confident and we're not. And sometimes they just are, okay? That's the fact. Sometimes they are just arrogant. But a lot of times it has to do with our perception based on what's going on in our world at the time. So getting aggravated about things that others do that we weren't allowed to do or we were punished for as children, sometimes that's where this comes from. We're taught a lot of times as children in relationships, by bullies, whatever, bosses, whatever the case may be. This can be pretty broad spectrum here. We are taught often that, or most of us, a lot of us that experience this, it's because we've been taught not to take up space, to take up as little space as possible, to interfere as little as possible, intrude as little as possible, or to not feel any particular way. That our feelings, when I was a kid, a lot of times it was don't talk back. Well, I wasn't talking back. That phrase actually drove me nuts, and I worked very hard not to use it with my daughter. It was me voicing my feelings, but there was no space for that, because back in the 80s, you didn't do that. You got smacked upside the head or, sent to your room for the day if you talked back to your parents, right? That's fairly common in the Gen X generation. It's talked about quite a bit. So a lot of times when we see people or even other kids do this when we get older, we're like, oh, no, that's not okay. It triggers something inside of us that we may have not even been aware was still there. So a lot of times that's where that comes from, is we get aggravated about things that others do that we weren't allowed to do or that we were punished for as children. Maybe we've been punished for as an adult, trying to be assertive and getting bullied by somebody, or having a boss that micromanages and makes us question every single little thing, whether we're capable. And this will sound familiar, because these rules don't disappear. They show up in reactions to people who we don't feel are following those invisible rules, those norms that we grew up with or that we were taught at some point in a relationship or a job. So if you're feeling this, drop a comment, let me know. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if you're here, you could be commenting right now and I might not be seeing it until afterwards. I promise I'm not ignoring you. But I would love to know if this is something you've experienced, and if there's a particular time or a particular situation that you want to share that you're okay with sharing. And if not, in the comments, shoot me a message and be like, hey, I really understand where you're coming from here. This is where it happened to me. So how do we stop with these knee-jerk reactions? How do we stop with this, looking, hyper focus, to go back to that verse that I started with, on the speck in our brother's eye, which is anybody basically that we're around, not our literal brother, but our figurative brother. And we're paying no attention to the plank in our own, because like that wooden spoon, it's kind of ironic that it was wooden, because I didn't actually plan on telling that story. I was so hyper-focused on this little speck that I wasn't looking at the giant thing that was going on with me. That would be the plank, that was the catalyst for this, that I wasn't dealing with and wasn't taking care of, and therefore it exploded in the speck in my husband's eye, okay? So how do we stop? Well, for me, it starts usually when I find myself recognizing my own guilt. Like if I start getting critical in my head of something and then I'm like, oh yeah, guilty. And then I shut up. Then I just shut up, because once I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that before. Oh yeah, I just did that last week. Then it's like, okay, stop, Donna, just stop. So when you're feeling particularly irritated by something or someone, good morning, Miss Kayla. Make sure you go back to the beginning. Usually you find something here that resonates, and I'm starting to wrap up. So good to see you. So when you're starting to feel particularly irritated by something or someone, you're really not sure why. You can't put your finger on it. Pause. That's the first thing I do. I just pause. And I hush. Like I said, once I start recognizing my own guilt, I just shut up with my criticism. I pause and I hush and I ask, why is this bothering me so much? Is there anything else happening? Like, is this person really just being a butthead? Or am I reacting because there's something else going on? And I will be honest, there are times where I've stepped back a little too much and not dealt with something, and it's kind of come to a head. But most of the time I find that, and you guys have heard me say this before if you've been following me for a while, I impose my minimum weight rule, which can range from 2 minutes to 2 days, sometimes 2 weeks, depends on the situation. The minimum weight rule, which is basically just, you get an email that really torques you, don't answer it. Walk away from it. Go do something else. Go back to it, read it again, go do something else. Don't respond to it right away, because a lot of times, and I have found this to be the case with me many, many times over, a lot of times what you read the first time, and sometimes even the second time, isn't really what's there. It depends on your lens at the time. So pause, however long that needs to be, and ask yourself, why is this bothering me so much? Is there anything else happening? Is there a reason internally that maybe, sometimes I'm just foul. Sometimes I'm over here working from home, doing school from home, and getting on my own stinking nerves. I'm not going to lie. And once I realize that I'm overreacting to an email or a text or, I don't know, a bird outside a little bit too much, and it's like the third or fourth time in the course of the morning, I'm like, Donna, what is going on with you? You need to settle down. We need to pause. We need to ask why this is bothering us so much, and if there's anything else happening. And this is what works for me. And then there's this cool little exercise that I learned from a class that I took. It's like a, is it in your control type thing? And I've talked about this once before. In other words, this is how we focus on what we can control. Can we go into a corner and do it for 2 minutes? And some of the examples are, can you find a job? Can you do that for 2 minutes in the corner? Not exactly, because that's a step-by-step process that requires a little bit more finesse. But can you eat a banana? Is that a behavior? Is that something you can control? Well, yes, you can go into a corner for 2 minutes and eat a banana if you have a banana. So that's how, it's just kind of a very layman's example. Like, can I control what a family member is saying about me? Not really, unless I can go in the corner and walk away from them for 2 minutes. In that case, I can, but I still can't control what's coming out of their mouth, a family member, a friend, a business rival, whatever the case may be. But I can control how I respond, because how I respond is something that I can work on in 2 minutes in the corner. So that's a little exercise. So we pause, put that minimum weight rule in, whatever that looks like, ask ourselves, why is this bothering me so much? Is there something internal happening, or are they really just out of line? Because again, I cannot stress enough that this does not mean that it's okay to accept behavior that really is out of line. But a lot of times we react to other people that aren't really doing anything wrong. They're really just being whatever they are, and we are reacting to it because of something internal that's going on. So is it within our control? Can we do it, fix it in 2 minutes in the corner? That doesn't apply to everything, like I said, like finding a job, but it's a really good exercise. It's a really good tool to start with. And then recognize the difference between overreacting to irritating things versus, like I just said, a legitimate reaction to maltreatment. But a lot of times, even in those cases, there are still responses that we can control. I've had people in the past that worked really hard to get under my skin, like they knew the buttons they could push, and they worked really hard to do it. And that didn't stop until I changed how I responded to them. And once I became aware and I recognized that I could control how I reacted, and how if they didn't get the reaction they wanted, they stopped pushing buttons. It was a game changer for me. So I hope that made sense to you. My challenge to you, again, now that it's on your radar, so you'll have that red car effect, so you may be more likely to notice it. Like I said last week, you may be more likely to notice when it's happening and be like, oh, yeah, that's maybe, you know what they were doing really wasn't that big of a deal. At the end of the day, it has zero effect on me in 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 months. But boy, I'm really edgy today. And it's because whatever they just did reminded me of something that I really react to. So my challenge to you again is, was there ever a time, drop it in the comments, send me a message, that you overreacted to something someone did or said? Reflect, or you start looking for it, see if you notice that you're doing it in the next couple of weeks, in the next week. And is your reaction, or was your reaction, whatever the case may be, more about things going on personally with you than about whatever was going on with them? And what this turns into eventually is we start, as for me anyway, as I started to reflect and started to notice these things, I figured out it was easier to swallow that a lot of times the way people treat me isn't really about me. It's about them. And it starts with that awareness of when we're reacting to something and why. Whether whether the item really justifies the reaction, like the wooden spoon, or if there's something else internally going on that we're really reacting to, and this is our speck versus our plank. So that's my challenge to you. Think about that. Reflect on a time when that may have happened, or maybe be aware over the next week. Feel free to shoot me a message if you don't want to drop it in the comments, because sometimes this stuff is personal, and I get it. Shoot me a message. Let me know if you picked up on something. If a week from now you're like, oh my gosh, Donna said it, and here it is. Because I do that to myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just talking about this, and here I am doing it. So that's my challenge to you. Like I said, if you're not comfortable dropping into the comments, shoot me a message. Let me know what you remembered, what you found, whatever. And if this helped you. And remember these things. Awareness of ourselves is not self-blame. Let's not turn it into that, because that is a very slippery slope. We just start assuming everything that we see, everything we react to is our fault. That's not what we're talking about here. Awareness is not self-blame. And it also doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. Sometimes in ourselves as well. And then our self-trust, our self-confidence, and I talked about this a little bit last week too, and I'll drop that video link in the comments. Our self-trust and our confidence grows when we are open to the fact that we may not be right, or we may be overreacting, when we are open to the fact that we may be able to change something in how we react or respond instead of just automatically getting defensive. That makes a huge difference for me anyway. And when I find myself getting defensive, I know now, I'm not perfect. It takes daily practice. But when I find myself getting irritated or getting upset about something, or especially when I'm getting defensive, I know I have to stop and be like, hey, Donna, what's going on? What's going on in that thought process? More often than not, my thought loop has gone to, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I don't feel 100%, What am I thinking? That negative thought loop has started, and that's what drives a lot of that for me. May not be the case for you, but if it's not on your radar to think about it, be aware of it, you may never know. So again, awareness isn't self-blame. It is freedom, but it also doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. So there's a balance there, and we have to be very careful with it. And then again, self-trust and confidence grows when we are open instead of just defensive. So if this helped you, let me know. Shoot me a message, drop a comment, share the video. There might be somebody else that might benefit from it. As most of you know, if you just started following me or you don't know, I am on YouTube now. I do still continue going live here on Facebook. I haven't attempted to go live on YouTube, but my videos are uploaded to YouTube within an hour after I'm done because Facebook only keeps them for 30 days now. So if you just stumbled on this video and you love it and you want to see more, you can follow my YouTube channel, which I will also drop in the links. Or if you didn't get a chance to watch it all the way through and you want to go back to it later and you don't want to get on Facebook to do it, you can go to YouTube. It should be up within the hour. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you have a fabulous Wednesday and a fabulous week. Let me know if you stumble on any realizations about yourself from what we talked about today. And as always, until next Wednesday, be well and stay warm.